friends, welcome back. Let us start with a new module, 12th module, that is positive organizational scholarship. This is the last module of this course and something very different which is away from what we have discussed about organizational behavior based on deficiencies, distractions and deviances. Till now that is what we have talked about in order to promote efficiency and effectiveness among employees and of the organizations. In this module, that is positive organizational scholarship, this module will talk about positive deviances, we will talk about strengths and we will not talk about weaknesses. We will talk about that how jobs and employees can be tapped in terms of calling. Calling, that means building on their own strengths, generating their own latent talents and strengths and manifest them in their performances. So, let us first define that what is positive organizational scholarship. So, I will talk about a very simple example based on an individual's vision, that imagine that an organization is characterized by distress, anxiety, fear, burnout and feelings of abuse, even more conflict, lawsuits, contract breaking or breaching, retribution and disrespect that characterizes many interactions and social relationships in any organization. We tend to experience these kind of feelings and experiences which is full of distress, fear, stress, burnout, anxiety, conflict and disrespect. Now, in contrast, if we talk about some positive, where we imagine that all organizations are typified by appreciation, collaboration, virtuousness, vitality and meaningfulness, where we are just finding out what is positive in the whole organizational process and structure. Definitely, no organization is free from flaws, no organization is free from distractions, no organization is free from deviances. But apart from this, every organization has some positive strengths as well, which most of the time we tend to ignore, or we have never thought of that what are those good points of any organization where we can build upon that goodness. So, if we talk about, in contrast to what we talk about in OB, where we talk about appreciation, collaboration, virtuousness, vitality and meaningfulness, then our perception about the situation, about an employee as a co-worker or about the whole organization will definitely alter in a very positive manner. So, this is a positive deviance where we are not shifting to negative deviance, we are shifting to positive deviance while focusing on the positive strengths or pillars of any organization. So, emphasizing human well-being as a key indicator of success. So, where we are talking about success in terms of finance, in terms of policies and strategies, why not to talk about the success of the organization in terms of the well-being of employees where they are happy, because a happy worker is a productive worker. So, how employees are experiencing well-being at workplace in terms of autonomy, in terms of mastery, in terms of personal growth, in terms of positive relations, or maybe the purpose for why they have joined any group, right. So, this is about well-being. Now, imagine that members of such organizations are characterized by trustworthiness, resilience, wisdom, humility and high levels of positive energy. When we have perceived or we have made the objective of any organization towards the well-being of employees, then definitely its impact has to be very positive. So, if the goal is positive, then definitely it has a spillover effect on the organization and employees in positive terms, whereas there is more trust, there is more wisdom, there is more humility and at the same time the organization is full of positive energy and resilience. Maybe if we talk about just distress and losses and not profits also, then maybe employees will feel, or any organization will experience immense pressure because of global competition and we tend to slack. But yes, if we talk about the positive aspects, then that can transform employees even under stressful situations to be resilient, that is bouncing back from any adversity and then regaining that situation in a more energetic manner. And at the same time, social relationships and interactions are featured by compassion, loyalty, honesty, respect and forgiveness. So, where not only arbitration or mediation is implemented or executed in order to resolve conflict, but maybe with some other perspective like is for example forgiveness can also be another way out to resolve any conflict. So, this is something we are talking about, the positive aspect of organization structures or organization where employee well-being, forgiveness, humility, wisdom or clear thought process is more emphasized. So, imagine that scholarly researchers emphasize theories of excellence, positive deviance, extraordinary performances and positive spirals of flourishing in organizations. So, here flourishing means that employees are more capitalizing on the positive traits rather than focusing on only the financial traits of any organization. So, this is all about positive organizational scholarship. So, we can define positive organizational scholarship or POS as the process and dynamics that occur in and through organizations and focuses on the positive, flourishing and life giving aspects of organizations. It is about strength based, that is, we are not talking about the diseases, we are talking about the positive deviances. So, it does not reject the value and significance of organizational survival and success, but at the same time it emphasizes the phenomena that represents positive deviance. So, that is what it is, that organizational goal will definitely will remain of paramount significance or importance, but at the same time turning our heads to positive deviance also carries lot of significance when we talk about positive organizational scholarship, and this is the call of the time. POS is concerned primarily with the study of specially positive outcomes, process and attributes of organizations and their members. As we discussed in the previous slides, that it is not only about promotions, it is not only about resources, it is not only about financial outcomes or any financial issue. It is about the outcomes, process and attributes of organizations and their members in terms of resilience, in terms of forgiveness, in terms of humility and in terms of virtuousness, which makes the organization more flourishing, because it is not only the financial capital or human capital, it is about social capital or employee capital, that how they should be considered as an important asset to any organization, because every employee is a human being first of all and then he becomes an employee. So, POS does not represent a single theory, but it focuses on dynamics that are typically described by as excellence, thriving, flourishing, resilience or virtuousness. So, these are the positive aspects or traits of any organization that are deep rooted, but they were never realized that how these deep rooted positive traits should be brewed in a way that it should be experienced by every employee in the organization in form of virtuousness, in form of thriving. That is, thriving means that we are facing the global competition with positive deviance, in terms of resilience, in terms of humility, in terms of excellence, in terms of flourishing. Thus, POS represents an expanded perspective that includes instrumental concerns, but puts an increased emphasis on the ideas of goodness and positive human potential. So, what is human potential? It is about forgiveness, it is about humility, it is about resilience, it is about transcendence and it is about forgiving, which we cannot generate while having some physical resources in the organization. They are just only for survival or for organizational process. So, what are the domains of organizational positive scholarship? That is POS. Now, when we talk about this domain as positive organizational scholarship, there are actually three independent terms which have been collaborated, and all these three terms individually have lot of significance within themselves. So, let us talk about each and every domain, that is positive organizational scholarship, in detail. So, POS encompasses three elements. Altogether, the enablers, the motivations and the outcomes or effects. So, the enablers, it talks about process, capabilities, structures and methods. It is about organizational hierarchical structure and process that gives any organization physical structure in order to survive and stand in global competition. The motivations are unselfish altruistic contribution without regard to self. It is about not only focusing on your own personal interest, but actually contributing to the organization. So, this is about the motivation. Motivation should not be only to gain some recognition or give input and maximum output. It is not about those motivations. It is about engaging in behaviors where you are contributing to the organization beyond your own selfish interest, like altruism or citizenship behaviors. And the third is the outcomes or effects in terms of vitality, meaningfulness, high quality relationship associated with positive phenomena. Till now we have resources, we are creating an organizational process where we can think about our goal in a very collaborative manner with some teams, and then we reach the outcome in terms of efficiency and effectiveness. But POS talks about enablers, motivations and outcomes of or effects in terms of positive deviance, that even if organizational processes are there, the motivation has to be very much altruistic, and the outcomes of such kind of motivation should be in terms of meaningfulness that adds purpose to your life, high quality relationship and vitality. Vitality, that engaging in citizenship behavior is a vital aspect of any employee in order to help organization to reach the pinnacle. Therefore, POS is distinguished from traditional organizational studies and seeks to understand that what represents and approaches the best of human condition. So, best of human condition, it is not only about experiencing only organizational success in terms of goals, in terms of financial performances. It is beyond that, where you experience optimalism, that is you are fully functional, you are performing at the peak, and at the same time there is lot of perception of vitality and meaningfulness in your job experience, because what you are doing, you are motivated to offer something good to the organization and to the external world. Therefore, in seeking to understand this phenomena of POS, it can be considered in terms of three concepts: positive, organizational, scholarship. So, these three terms when combined, that becomes a phenomena, but ultimately these three concepts have different and deep meaning within themselves. Okay, so let us talk about in detail about positive. So, what does positive means in any organization? It seeks to understand positive states such as resilience or meaningfulness. Meaningfulness here means that there is satisfaction, and at the same time you understand that the job is so meaningful to you that not only you are contributing to the organization, but to your life in a positive manner, and at the same time we are contributing to the external world. So, this is about meaningfulness or resilience, that whatever is the situation, that organization promotes resilience, that is bouncing back from the adversity and then standing tall. So, even in global competition, if any organization fails to perform better or occupy the market in more percentage or higher percentage, then maybe the organization will bounce back based on an individual's capacity to be resilient enough. So, these dynamics and outcomes are associated with those states such as gratitude and positive connections. It is especially interested in the positive dynamics which are referred to as positive spirals. So, if one positive goal is there, definitely it is going to have positive outcome. So, there is a trend of positive upward spiral that are frequently associated with positive organizational phenomena. So, POS encompasses not only the examination of typical patterns of behavior and exchange, but it also tends to emphasize the relationship of potential patterns of excellence and especially positive deviance from expected patterns. Thus, the interest is exceptional, virtuous, life-giving and flourishing phenomena. So, any job you perform, it is not only about the task, it is about the significance of the task and the kind of satisfaction we gain, which gives us a sense of vitality and significance, because that vitality will give you a sense that you have contributed something to the organization irrespective of your age, irrespective of your salary, irrespective of your designation or status. What is organizational? So, this is a new and different lens that has been given to the term organizational. It has a new or different mechanism which produce extraordinarily positive or unexpected outcomes and illuminates how context and process and their interactions are related to positive states in individual, group and organizations. So, any outcome or process at individual, group or organizational level has to be positive when we talk about POS. For example, how organizational practices enable individuals to craft meaningful work through fostering individual callings in contrast to typically focusing on employee productivity and morale. So, here callings means that how any task that has been assigned to an individual will perceive his job as calling in terms of its strength, that what is beyond this task, an individual has something to associate with the task and then perform with those strengths. So, it is about calling. What are the positive strengths of an employee where he can contribute to perform his job in a more better and compassionate manner. How the cascading dynamics of empowerment can broader inclusion of stakeholders in public organization in contrast to a focus on the political dynamics of stakeholder demands, or how building on strengths produce more positive outcomes in diverse array of settings. So, diversity is there, but how positive aspect of every diverse aspect can be taken out or extracted from every factor in order to contribute positively to the organization, such as learning, employee commitment, leadership development and firm profitability, and in contrast to a more typical focus on managing or overcoming weaknesses. So, this is about the organizational phenomena in a new lens, that how it leads to positive spirals. And scholarship. An interest in POS implies commitment to the full spectrum of activities involved in scholarship. So, this extends beyond the desire to develop rigorous systematic and theory based foundation for positive phenomena. This requires careful definitions of term, a rationale from prescriptions and recommendations, consistency with scientific procedure in drawing conclusions and grounding in previous related work. So, it is about forming or formulation of organization policies, procedures and structure in a manner that it not only focuses on survival and success, but at the same time it is also expanding its strength in creating more human capital or social capital where employee strengths are being strengthened. Now, these employee strengths are in terms of commitment, in terms of desire for more learning, for more being contributing for citizenship behaviors, and that too on scientific aspects. We tend to just spread a word that we have to be humble, we have to perform a vital job. No, that has to be inculcated based on some scientific methods. Therefore, POS is biased towards appreciating how each of these elements of the scholarly endeavor contributes to the vitality of the others. Vitality of the others here means that how an individual is unique based on his own qualities. Thus, POS focuses on the ennobling and uplifting aspects of the human condition more than on achieving effectiveness. So, here ennobling aspect of human condition focuses on that how an individual can function optimally or on an overall basis, where there is personal growth, purpose, meaning and vitality, and at the same time flourishing. Okay. How we tend to identify or study this broad concept of positive organizational scholarship. So, based on some scientific methods and conceptualization of POS, certain aspects or correlates have emerged out of it, such as organizational resilience, meaning in work, mindfulness work, virtuousness at work, appreciative inquiry and well-being at work. These are some of the correlates which are associated with POS, and how these correlates have become functional based on scientific methodology in order to inculcate about these kind of human efficiency. So, I will in this session will talk about organizational resilience. If we talk about resilience in the literal sense, it is about bouncing back from the adversity or any trauma, right. It is about an individual resilience, it is about an organizational resilience. So, how any organization in the face of adversity tries to bounce back in market and tend to establish the organization again with better performances. So, what is resilience? It refers to the maintenance of positive adjustment under challenging conditions. So, any organization that is facing any financial crisis or any economic crisis, then it does not mean that any organization will shut down. That organization tend to adapt to that failure and adjust to new situation, because failure has been experienced. So, it is a new situation, and then bouncing back with some positive outcomes. That means using that adversity in their own benefit and then compete with the situation. Therefore, organizational resilience is the ability of an organization to adapt and respond to incremental changes and sudden disruptions, recover, resume, restore and learn in order to survive and prosper. Facing adversity, bouncing back. So, during that phase of adversity, what we learn, we tend to bounce back with those experiences and we tend to resume and restore our own new makeup, and then we tend to compete with the external world. So, here the own makeup means psychological makeup of the employees and psychological makeup of the organization based on their experiences. It refers to the characteristics or capacity of individual or organizations, or more specifically the ability to absorb strain, persevere, functioning despite the presence of adversity such as rapid changes, poor leadership, performance and production pressures, and external diversity such as increasing competition of demands from stakeholders. So, these are the kind of factors that any organization can face in terms of adversity. It can be a strike or lockout as well. Due to some misalignment between the union and the higher authorities, there can be some misalignment and there is a situation of strike or lockout, and ultimately there is a state of adversity. So, how under such type of circumstances organizations identify that adverse situation, adjust with that adversity and then resume or restore the organizational functioning. Therefore, it is an ability to recover or bounce back from untoward events. Definitely, if anybody can predict any untoward event, then corrective measures can be taken, but most of the time it is unpredicted. Then ultimately, first of all, it is about accepting the adversity, then adjusting to the adversity and then again bouncing back. So, it is about at organizational level and individual level. Further, organizational resilience includes an adaptation aspect and allows organizations to come out of the crisis stronger than before. Why? Because when you are bouncing back, then the person has already experienced growth. So, any organization will come back to the competition with some kind of growth, because that experience and adversity will give them some more experience how to deal with adversity. They have more ideas and more strategies to deal, and they are more stronger. So, this characteristics distinguishes resilience from robustness, which is defined as the ability of a system to maintain functions despite disruptions. So, system will remain the same, that is the robustness, but in the system how organizational policies, procedures, even employees are experiencing that change, and that change is again fitted into the same system, that makes any organization resilient. So, thus the adaptation process requires improvement in overall capacity, that is a generalized capacity to investigate, to learn and to act without knowing in advance what one will be called to act upon. So, this is something, a strength that is cultivated within organizations and among employees, so that they have that ability to accept, adjust and bounce back. Thus, organizational resilience is the necessary capacity to cope with unanticipated dangers after they become manifest. Okay, as I mentioned that organizational resilience can be experienced at individual level, at group level and at organizational level. First of all, how it is experienced at individual level. So, at the individual level, resilience is engendered by those who have the relevant and specific knowledge necessary to make a decision and resolve a problem. So, the predominant theme that arises from the literature review suggests that resilience is founded on the two building blocks. What are those building blocks? That is adequate resources. When we talk about resilience at individual level, it talks about the resources, that is human, social, emotional and material capital, so that they can develop competence. So, whenever any adversity has been experienced by an individual within the organization, then the first thing that any organization or individual would do to bank upon the resources. What are the resources that they already have and how they can use in a more competent manner in order to face that adversity. So, these resources are human, social, emotional and material capital. The other is an active mastery motivation system. That means, when individuals have experiences that allow them to encounter success and build self-efficacy and that motivate them to succeed in their future endeavors. So, any individual who is experiencing any kind of setback, trauma or adversity within organizations, they tend to build upon those strengths that identify their own efficiency, which leads to self-efficacy, that they have more strength in order to make them more efficacious in order to face that adversity. That motivates them to have more mastery on their skills, on their strengths and then try to bounce back or face the adversity. So, these building blocks help a person supersede the prevention or reduction of risk or stressors in promoting resiliency. Therefore, resilience also hinges on individual training, experience and the development of specialized knowledge. The individuals gain control over key task behaviors and exercise discretion in performing those behaviors. So, they tend to build more strength based on the knowledge, skills, training that they receive, and at the same time there is reduction of risk or stressors in promoting resiliency. As a result, a sense of competence increases and individuals are better able to respond effectively to resilience or challenging situations and persevere in the faces of failure and challenges. So, this is how individual becomes resilient at organizational level when he faces any calamity, any trauma, any adversity within organizations, and how he or she, an individual, can focus on his own strengths that make him more motivated to build up a new system in order to overcome challenges. Next is organizational resilience at the group level. So, there are three aspects at the level of team learning and collective efficacy. The first is at the level of team learning, team oriented towards acquiring new skills, mastering new situations and improving competence are more likely to adjust positively to challenging conditions and can deliver high performance over the long run. Therefore, groups who have honed their competencies are more likely to register and handle the complexity of dynamic decision making and may be more motivated to persist in the face of obstacles and adversities. So, at team level, when members have more skills in order to perform effectively, then they can use those skills or build up new skills based on their training to face the adversity in a more efficacious manner. This is about the at the team level learning. So, they are more able to handle the dynamics of any complex situation and engage in more mature decision making and may be motivated to persist in the face of obstacles. But actually how does this happen? When we are talking about honing new skills or using those skills at a higher level, then there has to be some way out. So, how it happens? So, some three mechanisms have been suggested by OB professionals that how adversity or organizational resilience can be built up at team level. The first mechanism is accumulated prior knowledge increases the ability to acquire new knowledge and use that knowledge in new settings. So, previously any learned technique or phenomena or any knowledge increases the ability to acquire new knowledge and use that knowledge in new settings. So, this means that the knowledge base has to be very strong for employees, where they are not only using their prior knowledge, but at the same time they tend to hone their skills, develop new knowledge, skills and use those new and old knowledge for better decision making. The other mechanism is expanding a group's collective knowledge, that is their competencies, their response repertoire and capacity to make sense of new situations. The knowledge based diversity of members can influence the group's capability to sense, register and regulate complexity. Any organization or any group faces adversity, they tend to pool the individual knowledge base, they pool all the individual knowledge base and ultimately there is more robustness in the system, in their functionality, that enables them to overcome any adversity and bounce back. So, this includes not only their competencies, but actually the response repertoire, that is under what kind of mechanism and process it has multiplied positive responses. Which process has multiplied positive responses will be more collected and there will be more understanding of any new adverse situation. And the third mechanism is the experiential diversity of individual group members. Teams are composed of individuals with broad expertise who may be better able to grasp variations in their environment, perceive specific change that need to be made and have the capability to act. So, it is about hinging upon or banking upon the diverse knowledge, skills, abilities and competencies of the employees and use those expertise at group and individual level in order to understand the situation, in order to take a grip of the whole adverse situation and then giving their own perspective in order to change the whole situation. So, these capabilities are mediated by an effective communication process that promotes competence, enhance human capital, social and material assist and reduce risk or structures. Right. So, we can say that positive organizational scholarship is a departure from the extant organization theory and reflects an attitude that views organizations and their actors are as efficacious and capable of exceptional performance even in the face of obstacles. So, based on these three mechanisms, that is knowledge is most important asset in any organization at group level or individual level or organizational level, and how this diverse knowledge can be pooled in order to understand the adversity of the situation or the extent of the adversity of any situation, and then trying to take the grip of the situation based on knowledge and better decision making. And the other aspect is, if the first is at the team level learning, the other is collective efficacy. It materializes from an individual's perceptions of the group's functioning and is ultimately the product of the interactive and coordinative dynamics among team members. So, it materializes on an individual's operative functioning based on the task that has been assigned, and then their efficacy has been pooled in order to make the group and individual more efficacious. So, it materializes from an individual's perceptions of the group's functioning, that is how an individual perceives his knowledge base and the group's knowledge base, how it operates, and once this all information is collective, it becomes more interactive and coordinative dynamics among team members. So, the key factors as the mix of knowledge and competencies in the group, how the group is structured and how its activities are coordinated, how well it is led, the strategies it adopts, and whether its members interact with one another is mutually facilitatory or undermining ways. This in turn influences problem solving capabilities and positive adaptations, and subsequently reinforces competency and efficacy. So, the point is that when we are talking about organizational resilience from the perspective of POS, so it is about bouncing back from adversity with more experience while depending more on the operationalization of employees at individual and group members based on their knowledge and experiences. How the knowledge base that already exists can be used to enhance the knowledge base, and then adversity can be grasped. All right. And the next is organizational resilience at the organizational level. So, organizational resilience is anchored in organizational process aimed at enhancing the organization's overall competence and growth, and restoring efficacy by enhancing the ability to quickly process feedback and flexibly rearrange or transfer knowledge and resources to deal with situations as they arise and are associated with resilience. So, what are those factors that lead to resilience, organizational resilience at the organizational level? The first is conceptual slack. It is the diversity in the analytical perspective employed by the members of the organization, combined with the willingness to question the current situation and the respectful acceptance of these questions by other members, thus allowing new solutions to emerge. So, it is about already existing the diverse pool of knowledge among members at group level and team level and individual level, and how that pool, extraordinary pool, and which is lying extraordinarily within the organizations, can be collected in order to revisit the adverse situation, and we are questioning the situation, and based on the questions and answers, what the real picture comes out, that will depend on how the situation can be handled. So, here conceptual slack means that we have ample amount of knowledge that is lying in the organization, within the organization and within employees, and how that slack, that is available knowledge or existing or extant knowledge, can be utilized in order to question that situation and then coming up with the solution. So, again I am pointing out on POS, we are not talking about innovation, we are not talking about creativity, it is about that how that pool of knowledge that is already slack or surplus in nature can be used to develop another strength of organization, that is organizational resilience. The use of ad hoc problem solving. This includes networks and decision structures which allow problems to flow toward expertise and contribute to resilience. That means problem is being shared from one level to another, right, and how expertise tend to grasp the problem and contribute to resilience. So, once the problem is being shared at all the levels irrespective of status, rank, position in the organization, when the problem or adverse situation is being shared within the organization at all levels, then it tends to grasp the attention of expertise in the chain, and immediately we get the solution. So, this makes the organization more resilient. For example, evident on aircraft carriers, at nuclear power plants, and in disaster response teams. Any disaster that happens, it is not only that the disaster that has taken place in terms of natural calamity has taken place at one place and then only it will be handled. The whole team will process the information across the departments, and how every cell department will come forward with some solutions based on their expertise in order to control that situation and then bounce back with more efficiency. So, this is about use of ad hoc problem solving, where every individual understands the situation, adverse situation, and how they can pull out any solution based on their expertise across the span of the organization. And the last is social capital, which also fosters resilience as organizations tap into their networks when responding to adverse events for needed insights, support and assistance, and cope with a broader array of interruptions or jolts. So, any organization that faces some adversity will try to bank upon the social capital based on insights, support and assistance that they will derive from any employee in the organization, or who extend their support in order to deal with the adversity and then bounce back. So, when these kind of factors are active in any organization, it leads to promote organizational resilience, which is more towards positive deviance, rather we are talking about negative deviance. So, whenever there is adversity, generally any organization will talk about that what can be the effect of adversity, right. But from the PO's perspective, it is a new lens that has been given to perceive adversity as an opportunity, that how we can approach any adverse situation with more knowledge and expertise that can help us to revive the organization with a new energy and force. So, this is about one aspect, that is organizational resilience. I will talk about the other correlates in the next session. Thank you so much.